A Labour government builds council houses. She gets the keys to her first home to stability. Labour is the party of equality, of the Equality Act, of equal pay, and of Sure Start. Will make work more family friendly, crack down on unfair pay and improve access to justice for those discriminated against at work.
Angela Rayner caught in a web of her own making. In a shocking ITV interview, Labour's deputy leader fumbled through questions about their ambitious housing plan, leaving viewers stunned. From confident assertions to evasive responses, Rayner's performance raises serious doubts about Labour's ability to deliver. Are we witnessing the unraveling of a political promise in real time? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Labour's audacious promise to build 1.5 million homes has set tongues wagging across Britain. Angela Rayner, the party's deputy leader, boldly proclaimed this ambitious plan as the solution to the UK's housing woes. But as the old saying goes, the devil's in the details. And that's where things start to get interesting.
We'll know somebody at the moment who is trapped either in rented accommodation or they're in, substandard accommodation or they're in temporary accommodation because we don't have the social housing we need in this country.
Well, yes, you say you want decent homes for everybody, but you're the one that decided that Labour Lords should vote against the government's nutrient neutrality plans, which they claim would have seen 100,000 new homes built.
To get round the table to make that happen, we put an amendment down which could have delivered on the programme. The government weren't listening. We don't believe that you have to wreck our environment to deliver the homes. We can do both of those things.
At first glance, Labour's pledge seems like a dream come true for countless Brits struggling to get a foot on the property ladder. The UK's housing crisis has reached fever pitch, with experts estimating a need for around 90,000 new affordable homes each year just to keep pace with demand. It's no wonder that Labour's grand promise initially sparked hope and excitement among voters. But as the dust settled and people started asking questions, cracks began to appear in Labour's housing blueprint. The contrast between the sweeping promise and the lack of concrete details became increasingly apparent. How many of these 1.5 million homes would be truly affordable? What's the timeline for this massive undertaking? And most importantly, how exactly does Labour plan to pull off this Herculean feat?
Well, one of the challenges we face because of the Conservatives crashed the economy and the situation we're going to inherit is that we won't be able to reverse everything that the Conservatives have done over the last 13 years. The house building that I'm proposing at the start of conference that we'll be announcing more this week is about actually giving people secure futures and making sure that we can tackle things like child poverty. But we've had 13 years of Conservative failure, a crashed economy, so we're going to inherit a very difficult programme if we were lucky enough to win the next general election, and therefore we're realistic about what we're able to achieve, but we will change Britain for the better.
As public scrutiny intensified, all eyes turned to Angela Rayner for answers. Surely, as the face of this transformative policy, she'd have the figures at her fingertips. But when pressed for specifics during her ITV interview, Rayner's responses left much to be desired. Instead of providing clear targets for affordable housing, Rayner offered a vague and evasive reply. You can't put an exact figure on each site because it very much depends on the viability and the size of the site and what becomes available. This statement, far from reassuring voters, only served to fuel skepticism about Labour's ability to deliver on their lofty promises. Rayner's fumbling attempt to explain the plan exposed a glaring lack of preparation and raised serious questions about the feasibility of Labour's housing strategy. Critics were quick to point out that political promises regarding housing have a history of falling short, and Labour's current pledge seems to be treading dangerously close to that well-worn path. As the ITV interview progressed, the pressure on Rayner mounted. With each question, it became increasingly clear that Labour's housing plan might be built on shaky foundations. The interviewer, sensing blood in the water, pressed on relentlessly, determined to uncover the truth behind the headline-grabbing promise of 1.5 million new homes. As the interview intensified, Rayner's composure began to crumble. What followed was a display of political evasion so blatant it left viewers wondering, how long could she dodge the truth before it caught up with her? The ITV interviewer, determined to get to the heart of Labour's housing promise, fired off a series of pointed questions. Rayner, visibly uncomfortable, struggled to provide concrete answers. When pressed on the number of affordable homes Labour planned to build, she fell back on vague statements and government figures, mentioning a $5 billion housing allocation and $500 million for the affordable homes program. These numbers, while impressive at first glance, failed to address the core issue: how many homes would actually be built? As Rayner fumbled through her responses, the inconsistencies in her statements became glaringly apparent. She spoke of ambitious targets, but couldn't provide a clear breakdown of how they'd be achieved. The contrast between Labour's grand promises and Rayner's inability to offer specifics was stark, leaving many to question the credibility of the entire plan. Social media erupted with reactions, with viewers expressing frustration and disbelief at Rayner's performance. Political commentators were quick to weigh in, drawing parallels to other recent Labour gaffes. The pattern was clear: Labour MPs often struggled with basic questions, leading to accusations of dishonesty and further eroding public trust. The interview reached its climax when Rayner was directly accused of lying about Labour's housing plans. It was a moment of high drama, with Rayner's credibility hanging by a thread. Her attempts to deflect and redirect the conversation only served to heighten suspicions about the veracity of Labour's claim. In the aftermath of the interview, Shadow Housing Secretary Kevin Hollenrake delivered a scathing critique. He suggested that the majority of new homes under Labour's plan would go to migrants due to loosened visa restrictions, stating, "The majority of homes they deliver will be for people coming into this country rather than British citizens." This accusation added another layer of controversy to an already contentious issue. As the dust settled on Rayner's disastrous interview, the implications for Labour were clear. Their ambitious housing promise, once a cornerstone of their policy platform, now lay in tatters. The public's growing skepticism about political promises was further reinforced, leaving Labour with an uphill battle to regain credibility on housing policy. Angela Rayner's fumbled interview has dealt a significant blow to Labour's credibility on housing policy. What was meant to be a flagship initiative has turned into a political embarrassment, leaving voters questioning the party's ability to deliver on its promises. The spectacle of Rayner struggling to provide basic details about the 1.5 million homes plan has only deepened public skepticism about political promises. This debacle highlights a growing trend of distrust in political rhetoric, especially when it comes to grand plans without substance. Voters are increasingly demanding accountability and concrete details from their leaders. The housing crisis remains a pressing issue for many Brits, and Labour's misstep has left a void in the public discourse for realistic, achievable solutions. Looking ahead, it's clear that addressing the UK's housing challenges will require more than just ambitious targets. Political parties must present transparent, well-researched plans with measurable outcomes. Only then can they hope to rebuild public trust and tackle the housing crisis effectively. Rayner's interview serves as a stark reminder that in politics, credibility is hard won and easily lost.